Bonsai peeps, Mike Toy, Bonsai Boise. Today I'm going to be working on this azalea. This is actually not mine. This is a friend of mine's that I work with. She got this for her birthday, and as you can see, it's one of those pre-made bonsais that you can buy, which aren't bad. You know, you can find some cool bonsais sometimes that way. But if you look at the soil here, it's more or less just the root ball. They just took the root ball, put it in the pot, put some rocks around it, and then wired it in. So let's see if I can do this without making a huge mess. But if you look at the bottom, you can see where the wires are. So what I'm gonna do today is basically take it out of this pot, get rid of all the soil that it's in right now, put in some good bonsai soil, and wire it back in and give it a little bit of a haircut in certain areas. Just trim up some. There's a couple of dead branches in there and some branches that are crowding other branches. I'm not gonna go too crazy with any pruning because it's not my tree, but I told her I'd clean it up a little bit for her. So here goes nothing. All right, so I'm back here. What we're gonna do now is give this guy a good rinse. I just rinsed it a little, but need to rinse it a little more. So here's the goal. What you wanna do is you wanna rinse it for the most part until you see it start draining clear out the bottom. And as you can tell, that's not clear. So, whoops, I actually just spilled off the side because I was looking at the camera and doing this at the same time. But for the most part, you want to give it a good thorough rinse after doing this, and you want to wait until the water drains out of the bottom as clear as possible. It's never going to be completely clear because it is, you know, filtering through dirt after all. But the reason that you're doing that is, A, you want to make sure that it is draining properly, because if you're pouring water in there and it's not coming out of the bottom at all, it means it is not draining. This, you can see, is draining. It's a little bit cloudy and dusty, and that's normal. You're washing out all the finer particles out of the soil, leaving the bigger particles, and that's what you want. Something else I'll note is that you saw it took a long time working that soil into the roots, and I could have gone on doing that seemingly forever. It always feels like when I'm doing that, you know, you're pouring just buckets and buckets and buckets of soil in there, and then you're working it in, and it's not going anywhere. You know, you lose a little bit over the sides or a little bit out of the drainage hole, but for the most part, it just feels like you're just going on forever. And you're just working it in, it falls into this bottomless pit. But what's happening is you're filling in all the nooks and crannies and air pockets and crevices in there. And it's good that you're doing it, because if you didn't do it, those would just remain as air pockets. And air pockets will dry out the roots. And if you dry out the roots in the soil, tree dies. So that's why we do it. We work it all in there as much as we can. You'll never get it perfect, but work it in as much as you can, and that way there's as few of those little nooks and crannies as possible. Oops, spilled a little over the side again because apparently I need two sets of eyes. One to look at the camera and one to do this. All right, so I'm gonna finish up giving it a rinse here, then I'll take it back over there to do a final trim. Okay, one thing I'm going to note here real quick, it's actually not draining as quickly as I would like. So if you run into that and you can't figure out exactly why, just take your shish kebab stick or your chopstick or whatever it is that you're using and just sort of poke around. You don't want to stab at the roots because you don't want to damage anything, but you just want to kind of poke around in there, move it around. If there's something in there that's clogging it, you know, you'll probably move it out of the way. This happens periodically on small trees and big trees. So, and it doesn't surprise me that it happened on this one, because I did pack the soil in there pretty tight, because it's a, you know, I know it's going to be sitting on a desk at work, people walk by, and I didn't want, you know, somebody hitting it and falling out and all the bad things that happen there. So packed it in there pretty good. So I'm just going to work this around a little bit more, give it another rinse. It'll start filling in those pockets, or busting whatever log jam is in there that's stopping it from draining as quickly as I would like. It is draining, it's just not draining as quickly as I would prefer it to drain. I'd like to see a little more steady and consistent drain. All right, I'm back. So I don't know what I did, but the little issue that I was having with it draining properly, I just kind of wiggled it around and kept sticking it with the shish kebab stick, and I didn't feel anything happen, but something happened in there, because all of a sudden it just started draining real quickly. So I don't know what it was, but anyways, we fixed it, and that's the bottom line. So anyway, so that's that. So now I'm just going to give it a little bit of a trim here, and I'll tell you what I'm looking for. I'm looking for dead branches, or branches that are kind of halfway broken like this here. So just take a little pair of scissors, cut it off like so. Dead branch like this here. In fact, I'm going to use something a little bigger. So I'm going to go in, and this is always the first thing you want to do, is to get rid of all the dead branches, because A, it gets out of your way so that you can see what's going on better, and B, you know for a fact you're not going to need them or want them in the process. So you start with those, and then you can start making decisions as to, okay, which branches do I want to keep, which ones do I want to get rid of. So We're gonna start with this. Just look for dead branches or branches that, you know, need cleaned up a little bit. Not a lot of dead branches, so that's a good sign. There's a few though. There's a lot of growth growing inward too, so that's what we're gonna look at next. And then I'll tell you kind of my process as I go to trim up any bonsai tree, really, for the most part. So I think I got all the dead ones. There really wasn't that many. So I'm going to give you an example here. Now, the first thing you want to do is you want to have a vision for it. So meaning like, I kind of want to see it in this shape. I see it kind of growing in this particular way. And then once you have an idea of what you want to accomplish, then you can start to make cuts and do things toward that vision. I know a mistake that I made a lot in the very beginning was I didn't have a vision. I just kind of went at it. I was ready to get going. I'd start cutting stuff and it looked good. And then afterward, I'm like, well, I kind of actually think the trunk flows more this way. But it's too late because I just made this big cut and it messed it all up. So have the vision first, even if it's a rough idea. You don't have to be married to the idea. You can change it later, but just a good starting point. The way I do it, if I don't know where to start with the trunk and see which way the tree is naturally growing. Before we repotted it, you might remember the trunk was kind of going straight up and then the branch went out. So I did more of a lean to it. So now it kind of has some flow to it. It's has a little more artistic touch. So I just used the tree's natural shape to kind of make the vision for it. Keep in mind, this isn't my tree, so I'm not trying to make any big, crazy cuts. I'm just cleaning it up a little bit. But based on that vision, so you got the trunk going like this and then up. Next thing you want to do is you want to get rid of any branches that are growing in toward the tree. So you want them to all grow outward. I'll give you an example here of the one I just found, if I can find it. There it is. So right here, see this branch? So that branch there, I hope that you can see that, is growing up and then inward toward the tree. So we want to get rid of that because that's really only going to get in the way of things. So we're going to make sort of a big cut here. Won't hurt the tree at all. We got rid of that. We made a nice, clean, flush cut. This, by the way, is just a pair of cuticle cutters at the dollar store, but they do wonders because they're super tough, perfect for little trees like this. You can make cuts that doesn't blink an eye. It cut the big branch, or big relative to this size. So, quick note too, the reason that we're doing this, the reason we want to make some cuts here is you don't want a bush. You don't want your tree to be this compact little bush that you just cut around. That's like a hedge, not a tree. You want to have something that resembles a small tree. And so any branches that are growing inward or in a direction you don't want, those are going to be competing with the branches that you want to grow healthy and grow stronger and branch out more. Because there's only so much sunlight that it can soak up in this little space, and there's only so much water, so much nutrients and minerals in the soil, so much room in the pot. So you have to be selective. You want to get rid of branches that are not serving your vision and keep the ones that are. So I'm going to look here for some more branches that grow inward or that crisscross each other. There's lots of those on here right now. So right here's another good example. You got a branch here and a branch here, and they crisscross each other. So now you have to make a decision. Well, which way do I want to cut? I'm actually going to make the call to cut this one because it's growing in the opposite direction that we want it to go. So we're going to get rid of that. And you got two branches here. This one's a little low, so we're going to get rid of that. And frankly, we're going to get rid of this one anyways because it also doesn't serve the vision. You can't be afraid to make big cuts. That's another mistake I made in the very beginning is, you know, we work so hard to get these little bonsais and get them growing. It feels weird to make cuts after all that work, but it serves a greater good. Not only that, remember this too, when you do make a cut, all the energy that was going in that direction has to go somewhere now. So that's just more energy that's going to go to other branches. So you're not really losing anything for the most part. Now this branch here, hate to say it, but also has to go because it's just not serving the purpose. It's growing out toward you. This is the front of the tree here. And it's getting in the way of that natural flow that we want to have. So we're going to have to get rid of that. And just a little bit of cleanup work down here. That one just fell off. There's some good examples here of branches that are growing inward and just sort of in the wrong place. Going to get rid of those. I want to get rid of these little things here. These are called suckers. They're not serving a purpose. They're not part of the flow, but they're sucking energy out anyways. So we want to get rid of those. Sometimes you can just pull them right off if they're small enough. Okay, just kind of looking and identifying little spots that need cleaned up right there. Little spot. I'm always amazed afterwards, after doing the cuts. You know, it's a little nerve-wracking making the cuts sometimes, especially when it's a new tree. But then you make them and you look at it and you're like, yeah, I see it now. That made sense. I'm also trying to do this backwards and upside down so that you can see, so bear with me a little bit. Okay, here's another good example. This branch right here, although nice and healthy, and I hate to do it, unfortunately, it's growing back inward, and that's not what you want. Piece of that just shot across the room. Okay, so we got rid of that. A little cleanup there. Okay, I don't really want to make any more big cuts. I just wanted to clean it up a little. I'm just going to look for anything else that is super obvious. Oh, there's one now that I said that. A super obvious one. So we're going to get rid of that. Almost wondering if this one here should go. See how it's curvature, has this nice arc, and then this guy's sticking way up. Not only that, but do we need it? I mean, if we got rid of it, it kind of fits that flow a little bit better. I'm almost thinking that should go. Tell you what I'll do, I'll cut it back to just a few leaves for now. See how that looks. You can always take more off. You can't put it back on though. Okay, I'm gonna quit while we're ahead here. We got it pretty well cleaned up, so I feel pretty good about the cuts that we made. It's in some good healthy soil, so we're gonna call it good with that. Let me give you a quick spin here. Okay, so in closing, just a quick recap of what we did here. So this was I assume a store-bought bonsai because it was the way it was wired and the dirt it was in, I could kind of tell. So if you get a store-bought bonsai or a gift as a bonsai, what you want to do after you let it acclimate for about a week or so in its new environment is take it out of the soil it's in. Oftentimes it's glued in there. I see that a lot. Which takes a little more finesse to get it out. Luckily this one wasn't glued. You want to get it out of that soil and then put it in some good bonsai soil. I've got another video on how to make bonsai soil. If you aren't sure where to start with that, check through the playlist for how to make bonsai soil. So put it in some good bonsai soil. Work the soil into the roots real well, like I did. Took me forever. You know, that's probably the most time consuming part, but worth doing. So work in the soil real good, rinse it off, get all of that that fine dust and fine particle stuff to flow out as much as you can. Make sure that it is draining well. As you can see earlier, it's a good thing we checked because at first it wasn't, so we had to work with it a little bit. And then just make some minor cuts. You don't want to do too much to these all at once. So if you go at it and you clean up all the roots and you trim some roots around and you trim branches and you do all this stuff all at once, sometimes it'll throw it into shock. But if you do minor cuts and minor changes at first, let it acclimate and build some strength again, then you can start to get a little bit more bold with your cuts and whatnot. So, seems like I was going to say one other thing. Can't remember what it is, so it must not have been too important. But I hope that helps. So if you have any questions, go ahead and shoot me a message or leave it in the comments box. I try to respond to all of those. So if you liked the video and it helped, please click like and subscribe on the channel, and hope that helps. So have a good day, everybody.